Prize money. Aren't we, Carolyn?
All right, Desi, feel free to begin.
Yes.
All righty. Well, good morning again, ladies, and I'll do a more official introduction since we are recording now, and we hope that others will, if they don't get a chance to tune in today, will certainly look at this later on, because our Super Saturday conversations are just so important. And I'm excited to welcome those of you that have joined us this morning, and hopefully those that will come in. I think most of the individuals on the call know that I am the state president of Black Women Organized for Political Action, and I'm excited to have been able to wear that hat for many, many years. As most of you know, our organization was founded in 1968 by 11 other members and myself. And I'm one of the 3 actually remaining founding members that God has blessed to still be here. So we're excited about your confidence and the work that we have done over the 50+ years BWOPA has been in operation. Let me just say about our Super Saturday conversations. This is our 3rd annual really Super Saturday conversations that we've held over the course of the past few years. And part of that is because we feel it's so critical to address some very, very important issues, whether they're local, state, or national. And I couldn't be more excited about this series, this Super Saturday series. I mean, when we talk about, again, Black maternal health care in California, I know I don't need to tell you women out there how critical it is. While I had the opportunity to serve on the city council in Oakland, one of the things that really first struck me deeply and passionately was the infant mortality rate in Alameda County. And I was horrified when I realized that we were, again, one of not only the worst counties that experiencing that in the nation, but actually in the country. And when we look at other countries, we often say 3rd world countries are worse off than us. And we were actually experiencing rates that were worse than some of those so-called 3rd world countries. So it just appalled me. And then later, again, as I began to get more engaged in this conversation, I realized that it was not just Alameda County, but having come and relocated in many ways to the Fresno County, I realized it was horrific there. And then starting to, again, address this issue with a lot of our statewide activists like Ashante Balk and others, we realized that this just is a profound issue in our community. And we were grateful that early on, BWOPA and others started to work with people like our now Vice President Kamala Harris, who was at that time the California State Senator, who really helped to begin to introduce some legislation to dealing with addressing these issues, working with, again, a lot of the community activists to make sure that our local areas, our local communities were informed, and our local elected officials were funding and putting the resources behind this project that needed to do that. So when our dear BWOPA sister, based in Fresno, California, Ashante Balk, again, approached me about partnering with the Black Wellness and Prosperity Center to actually host these conversations, I couldn't have been more excited. So of course I approached my board and we agreed that our series of with Super Saturdays this year would be asking our chapters to host a conversation around this important topic. And so all of the chapters have done that. This is the 5th of 6 that were scheduled. The last one will be next month. And what we plan to do that month is not just have one chapter, but invite all of the chapters to participate, especially some of the chapters who did not get as many people or participants as they wanted. Let's try to really broaden it out and make that really become our final conversation with the kind of numbers that we need to have in having this kind of dialogue. So having said that, again, I want to thank officially again, Shante for her vision and suggesting that we host this and being one of our key sponsors. Certainly, we want to thank the sponsors that also came to the table, our Sierra Health Center of the Blue Shield. A number of again, agencies realize how critical this is and join with us. So these conversations could be free and we can reach out to those that need to hear the message. I also then want to, of course, say thank you to our host chapter president today. Rita Duncan has, I've just been delighted to work with Rita over the past years, and I couldn't have been happier when she agreed to serve as our chapter president and then was reelected to that position by you lovely ladies. She is a dynamic soul. I mean, I tell you that, hardworking and committed. And that's the kind of leadership BWOPA is so happy that we see throughout our state. But there's always a special spark when you talk to Rita. She's committed, she is dedicated, and she puts in the time and the work. And so, Rita, I appreciate you and appreciate your team hosting this particular session. And again, it's being recorded. So those that don't join in today, I'm hoping that each chapter will arrange at some point to have members, maybe at one of their meetings, see the important conversation and dialogue that take place. And so I wanted to just give you an opportunity to say a few remarks at this time, and then we're going to go back and start our dialogue with Dr. Cassandra. So Rita, welcome and thank you for your work and your team effort.
Well, thank you, Desi. I was honored that you reached out to me and asked me to really try to revitalize the Hayward and South County BWOPA chapter. And I can't say enough on how it has shifted me and motivated me to be more involved in my community in which I live in. And I can't say enough on what a great role model you are to me, and to have that commitment and to be still doing it strong for 50 plus years. You know, it takes a special kind of person, as you said, to give of themselves like that. But I can't say enough about the ladies that I won't say that I lead, but that I'm in I collaborate with to manifest this chapter that we call Hayward South County. Have some wonderful individuals, very talented, very community minded, and have put themselves out to be in elected positions, which is no small task. So I feel honored to be a part of this group. And I also want to welcome each of you to this wonderful Super Saturday conversation, which, maternal Black healthcare is, as Desi, excuse me, so well said, is a crisis in our Black community. And they are shining, they meaning our state board, and we are shining a light on this crisis and want to let young women in the childbearing age and their partners know that there are resources and that they're not doing this alone. But I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors, Alameda County Public Health Department, Alameda Health System, the Highland Hospital specifically, and Beloved Birth, Black Centering, and hashtag Deliver Birth Justice, and Healthy Black Families Incorporated. You know, these are an example of organizations that are focusing on trying to provide more maternal health care to our community. But again, I want to thank, Desi and our state, board, and Cassandra, Dr. Gilbert, for all of her efforts in coordinating this event for us. And I must thank my chapter members for showing up, but also specifically our Vice President, Raquel Johnson, and our Secretary, Alana Johnson, and Honorable Angela Andrews for their efforts in putting on this. So thank you, and I hope you learn a lot today and are motivated to maybe do something in this space to help right this crisis that we're in. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. Appreciate you, my dear sister, and appreciate the team effort. Well, it really is a pleasure to again probably not introduce, but present, as folks say, to some of you that may not know her, is Dr. Cassandra Gilbert. And Cassandra is my second vice president. And I say my because I take ownership of all of my leadership team. But Cassandra is a second vice president of the state board in our state, of our state, and it's the board of serving and representing all of our chapters. It's just always a pleasure to work with Cassandra. And when we kicked off this series, of course, one of the first persons I called was our second vice president in charge of programs to say, okay, we're getting ready to do this. Are you ready? And she's always ready. She steps up. But what made this particularly exciting to work with Cassandra is Cassandra, again, was one of the people that brought me to the table early on of her work when she was actually at Fresno State University doing a lot of work around child health and child care issues. And she brought this again to the table, and we worked at that time very closely with the activists in that area. And Tao was brought in to do some training, some leadership training, some advocacy training. And so I know that she has a passion for the topic that we're discussing today. And so normally I turn this part over to her to facilitate the conversation, since I've been kind of away for the past couple of months to talk with Shantae, to get the introduction, to lay the groundwork, to say what really it's why we're doing this. What are some of the critical issues? Well, we switched up a little bit today. Shantae, unfortunately, had an emergency, so she could not be with us today. But we certainly are not being shortchanged with knowledge base, because Cassandra is well aware of these issues. So before we go to our local panel and to get their reaction, I'm going to ask Dr. Cassandra Gilbert, as we welcome her, to set the stage for us. And I'm going to just try to give it, we try not to take a lot of time on this first part, but there's some critical issues that are out there. And it speaks to the reason why we, especially as African-American women, should be very concerned about what's going on. So with that, I'm going to ask you to join me in welcoming our sister, our friend, Dr. Cassandra Gilbert, to just give us a lay of the land and why this issue is so critical. Cassandra?
Thank you, Desi. Thank you all for being here today. I'm not going to take a lot of time, but it is such an important issue, and it's really evolved so much over the last several decades. I'm reflecting my age a little bit, but I studied maternal and child health back in 1983 when I finished my doctorate in that area. And I've just kind of watched it from afar, you know, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away. And as Desi mentioned, you know, the Black infant mortality disparity has been sort of at the top of concerns around perinatal issues for Black women for many decades. The issue of Black maternal deaths, of women dying during childbirth and pregnancy, really has gained more traction more recently, like in the last 3 decades, for example. And we've started to watch this and watch the evolution of it. And we, as BWOPA, having health as one of our 4 core issues, felt that there couldn't be a more important issue than the health of Black women, particularly dying during childbirth. And that is, as she mentioned, what led to our partnership with Shantae and the Black Wellness and Prosperity Center in Fresno to bring these conversations to you. So I have found fascinating is despite the growing awareness of this problem, there still is so much work to do. There have been a number of very high profile cases, like Serena Williams, for example, you know, famous tennis player who had adverse experiences during her pregnancy and childbirth and was kind of not taken seriously. And then a very prominent physician in New York who died also after, you know, indicating that something wasn't quite right, died during childbirth or shortly thereafter as well. And then, of course, having a Black woman in the White House, as Desi has mentioned, has really helped to push this issue forward, thank goodness. We're finally seeing within our state in California and in several other states, momentum around Black maternal mortality and what needs to be done in order to address it. And I think, you know, historically looking at the role that poverty and low income had was sort of the, you know, the rationale for the disparity. As increasingly as we have better research and particularly more Black researchers involved in this topic, we know that this is not a problem that's just affecting poor Black women, that structural racism and inequities in healthcare as a whole is contributing to this problem. And so we need solutions that address structural racism. You know, when you think about, okay, what have been some of the prominent strategies for addressing perinatal deaths over the last several decades, providing, you know, cultural competency training to providers has been thought to be a key strategy. Well, we know that the real transformative work is in bringing more Black healthcare professionals to the table. That changing attitudes around race and racism is a very long, protracted struggle that is not going to give us the kind of immediate or transformative impact. We need more Black folk, Black women in particular, engaged in helping Black women. When we look historically at what has been the role of Black support systems for women giving birth, it's been for Black and Indigenous women both. You know, we've had doulas, we've had midwives, perhaps unlicensed, if you will, uncertified midwives historically, dating back to, you know, 1619 and beyond, you know, Black women at the table helping Black women. This effort, why I was so excited about it, was to really see that finally the role of the doula, who is a non-medical provider, being at the table to provide the social and emotional support, that role, that person, and what they bring to the table is now being documented in research as being highly effective for reducing perinatal deaths. So then the question becomes, right, how do we then expand the availability and utilization of doula services for Black women in the community? Some of that has to do with reimbursement and costs, you know, for doula services. Some of it also has to do with workforce capacity. You know, do we have enough doulas out there who have access to the information that they need to better their practice, to expand their practices, and to be better in touch with the population of Black women that they serve, and they have such incredible skill sets for the services that they provide. So here in California, we are becoming re-immersed, and I think we sort of see this nationally too, re-immersed in the role of doulas, who for Black and Indigenous women over the centuries have had a critical role. So Shantae and the Black Wellness Prosperity Center, probably many of you here on this call today have been involved in the Black Doula Consortium that's developed here in California, the network. And one of the big issues, as I mentioned, is Medi-Cal reimbursement, right? While we know that this problem does not only affect low-income women, certainly having access for low-income women to doulas is important. And having the doula be reimbursed by Medi-Cal is a critical part of that. And Shantae, who couldn't be here today, was very helpful in putting together for me a list of some of the key legislation. I'm just going to go through that shortly. I think I've talked enough, and I'm going to turn it over to our local panel to talk about what are some of the options, what are some of the needs and challenges at the local level that an organization like BWOPA and other organizational partners can engage in to continue to move this agenda forward. The first piece of legislation that And Kata, if you could put the link to the California Department of Healthcare Services website in the chat, is around the expansion of the Medi-Cal benefit, as I mentioned. The next public meeting on that topic is going to be July 1st. And there's also a website called Doula Benefit at dhcs.california.gov that you can learn more about what that what that change in the state plan will achieve for doulas and for the families that they serve. That's the first. The second I want to mention is AB 1930. Joaquin Arambula brought this one forth. This is the expansion of comprehensive perinatal services through Medi-Cal. And what this legislation would do is it's going to require the department to cover broader, more comprehensive perinatal assessment and the development of individual care plans so that women who need them can have access to additional visits and units of service for as long as they need them in the perinatal period. So that's AB 1930, Joaquin Arambula. And then the third one is AB 2199, Assemblymember Wicks, and co-authored by Mia Bonta. This is called probably one of your local panelists may talk about this. This is called the Birthing Justice for California Families Pilot Project. This is a program that is going to include a 3-year grant opportunity to community-based groups, doula groups, to provide full spectrum doula care to members of communities with high rates of negative birth outcomes who are not eligible for Medi-Cal. So that's just women who just don't meet that income cutoff, and also for incarcerated women, which is outstanding. And then finally, I'll just mention this one briefly because it's in the scope, not perhaps as relevant to us here in Northern California, and that is the AB 2420 that Joaquin Arambula has also introduced, called Perinatal and Infant Child Health Extreme Heat Exposure. This one is really interesting as we think about climate change and its impact on health. He is calling for the department to consult with subject matter experts to review literature on the adverse effects of extreme heat, which, as you know, in the Central Valley is particularly important, to develop guidance for safe conditions and health considerations for pregnant women and their families, and provide guidance to the legislature by submitting a report on policy recommendations and best practices to address this. So that's just a quick context setting. I know that we're going to get much more in-depth information from our wonderful panel. So I'm not going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to hold any questions because I think our panel is going to address more on some of the topics that I mentioned. So I want to bring on.
Before you could quickly go on, I just want to say thank you, Cassandra. I want to let people know you were traveling, and when we found out that you were stepping into another role, you didn't hesitate. We appreciate your knowledge always. And now we're going to keep it moving forward. And please introduce, I guess, our panel leader, Raquel. Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Yes, thank you, Desi. I appreciate the love. You all know Raquel because she's right there in your chapter, but I enjoyed reading all about her in community engagement work and her service on various commissions at the local level, and her skill set around collective impact and bringing stakeholders together. So I was absolutely thrilled that she is now going to do the job that I typically would do for these Super Saturdays, which is introduce our panel of local experts and facilitate the panel discussion. So thank you so much, Raquel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cassandra. First of all, I want to acknowledge you and how gracious you have been to be able to get our chapter together and to get this on today. So thank you again so much. I appreciate that. First, I want to welcome everyone again to the BWOPA Tile Super Saturday event this morning. This morning, the BWOPA HAYWARD South County chapter will lead the discussion on Black maternal health in California and especially here in the Bay Area. So today we want to acknowledge, we want to lift up, and we want to bring into focus Black maternal health. I do want to take the time to recognize our chapter president, Mrs. Rita Duncan, for her leadership. And I also want to recognize Ms. Desi Woods Jones for her vision. We want to continually provide you with love and surround you with the fact that we are here for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As everyone has said, I am Raquel Johnson. I'm the Vice President of the BWOPA HAYWARD South County chapter. I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm an auntie, and I'm a sister. And so my intentions, and I hope our intentions today, are to really deepen the conversation about Black maternal health, to amplify community-driven policy, research, and care solutions, to bring into focus community organizing on Black maternal health, and to really center the voices of Black women and Black birthing people, Black families, the Black community, and the allies and stakeholders who actually lift them up. We have a full agenda today, but before we get started, I thank Ms. Rita for lifting up the acknowledging our local sponsors. I have a couple of others I want to do, so I'll just go ahead and repeat some of what Ms. Rita has already said, but I do want to acknowledge them and the totality of who they are. First, we have Healthy Black Families, Inc. We have Beloved Birthing Black Centering. We have Alameda Health System Highland Hospital, Alameda County Healthcare Systems Agencies, Public Health Department. We have the Deliver Birth Justice Campaign. And then we have two others that were not listed on the flyer, but I want to lift them up. Oakland Better Birth Foundation and Parent Voices Oakland. So each one of those have in their way had conversations already previously with this particular topic, which is important to our community. And they have been very insistent on making sure we continually lift up Black families. So we are pleased to start this morning with Delivery Black Justice Campaign. There's a video that we're going to show. It's regarding the national conversation centered within the Black area around Black maternal health. It was sponsored by several organizations, including our local sponsor, Alameda County Healthcare Services Agency, Public Health Department. But I want us to begin to start it off with that. And so I will put that up for us to begin that conversation. Excuse me as I link this up here really quickly. And I do hope that we can hear.
We're not getting the volume, Raquel. She's working on it. You're muted, Raquel.
So I apologize for the delay. I'm gonna hopefully get this going. Can we hear?
Yes. We hear you.
Can't hear the video?
No, there is a tiny icon, share sand, not only share screen, but share screen. Maybe it should pop up hopefully when you try to share it.
Yes, actually it is, I know what you're saying. Let's break out. I apologize.
It's okay.
We know about technical difficulties always.
That we ended up with a second
Yes.
cesarean.
Over
Once the
here.
baby was here,
Okay,
I
let me
took the baby
start
to
it
the
from the
baby
beginning.
stress situations with each of my pregnancies, but the one that stood out the most for me was my second pregnancy. Our experience was so horrible and traumatic that we ended up with a second cesarean. Once
Can
the
you
baby
start
was
it from the
here,
beginning again?
baby was in the NICU. I've been placed in high stress situations with each of my pregnancies, but the one that stood out the most for me was my second pregnancy. Our experience was so horrible and traumatic that we ended up with a second cesarean. Once the baby was here, they'd take the baby to the NICU, but no one would communicate with me. I didn't find out till later on that baby and I had a fever. We had situations with nurses. They had us pegged, like they gave us this feeling like we were bad parents. I go into all my pregnancies worried, like, am I going to see my baby alive in the flesh?
It is very much safer for white women to birth in this country than Black women. And that's represented by maternal mortality statistics that are often 2, 3, or 4 times higher than that of white women and white birthing people. Racism is harming our community and harming our ability to have safe and healthy pregnancies and births. In the Bay Area, we have decided to create Deliver Birth Justice as a way to bring the Perinatal Equity Initiative to our 5 counties. And this campaign is really an effort to help people understand what Black pregnant people are facing on a day-to-day basis so that we can move into a space of recognizing that dismantling racism is the only solution.
It's so important for us to have advocates and for us to know that we deserve to have a healthy birth and our babies are going to be well taken care of and that we're not overlooked.
Being diagnosed with Graves' disease, I went out of work on disability. My doctor looked at me as like some poor little Black girl that just was trying to work the system.
I'm a healthy woman, fully capable of carrying out a normal pregnancy. I had to have an emergency C-section. I wear a 5-inch scar on my body, and I can't fully explain why.
I got home from the hospital, my leg swelled up. That night, my sister quickly took me to the hospital. I was there for a week and a half to basically be treated for the post-preeclampsia that I went through. I feel like because of the whole experience from the very beginning, of me being induced and all of that whole experience didn't have to happen.
A lot of times we want to attribute some of these differences that we see in birth outcomes to different kinds of choices that Black mothers might be making or different kinds of unhealthy health behaviors that Black moms might be engaging in. But science shows us this is very much due to structural racism and the kind of racism that moms face when they go to the physician, seek out help from social service providers, when they're interacting with other institutions like our educational systems and criminal justice systems. These racist interactions that are happening, all of this leads to a cumulative amount of stress that moms face, not just during pregnancy, but leading up to their pregnancy. And this cumulative stress is making it very difficult for Black birthing people to have healthy pregnancies.
I think we've witnessed so much trauma of what it feels like when Black lives aren't valued. Hopefully people will start to understand that valuing Black lives starts at the beginning.
There has to be more accountability behind this. Anti-racist trainings and more Black doctors. I feel like systemic racism just really needs to be addressed. We got to listen to Black moms.
And so what I really hope through this campaign is that we inspire providers to really understand the ways in which perhaps their racialized socialization and their implicit bias and maybe even their explicit bias is really deeply impacting the lives of the Black community. I also hope that this helps policymakers understand that they have a role to play in this, that policymakers can absolutely change the trajectory of a Black mother or a Black baby's life. And they can do that by creating policies that dismantle structural racism.
Black mothers need better housing and better jobs.
We are absolutely amazing. We are warriors. We are strong. Without us, the world does not go round. So Black mamas are queen. We are it. We are everything.
Every single time we dismantle structural racism, we're saving a Black mother's life. We're saving Black babies' lives, and our lives matter. So this work is something that we all need to take on right away.
I just encourage everyone to learn more about the Deliver Birth Justice campaign. See us, hear us, know our stories, and help uplift us.
So I'm so pleased to have been in partnership with them to get this video on for us today. And I do hope that we can continue to have conversations that do uplift us as we move forward with this. So unfortunately, they could not be here with us today, but the essence of the video itself really speaks to what it is we're here for today. So thank you so much for that. Continue to put in questions into the chat that you may have, because we definitely want to make sure we get everyone's questions answered in a timely fashion. So before I introduce the panelists, Dr. Cassandra did mention some of the, what I will call some red flag data that's centered around Black birthing people. According to the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, Black infants in the United States are more than twice as likely to die as white infants before their first birthday. That's about 11.3 per 1,000 Black babies, compared to the 4.9 per 1,000 centered around white babies. And California, and as much as that in the US, Black mothers birthing people experience the highest rates of maternal morbidity, which is serious complications, and mortality, unfortunate death, of any racial ethnic group. Despite impressive reductions in maternal mortality for all racial ethnic groups in California, Black mothers birthing people are 4 to 6 times as likely to die from pregnancy-related causes and twice as likely to suffer from maternal morbidity, such as hemorrhages and infections, than any others in any other racial ethnic groups. These statistics are especially concerning given that maternal morbidity and mortality metrics are widely considered to be some of the most fundamental parameters of public health. And that information came from the California Healthcare Foundation. So I want to welcome in our panelists this morning. I am going to start with Ms. Samsara Morgan. She has been a certified doula for over 40 years with over 1,000 births. She is the executive director and founder of NIA Healing Center for Birth and Family Life, Oakland Better Birth Foundation, and several other foundations. She is the author, a community elder, activist, pregnancy and family life coach, and apprentice midwife. Ms. Samsara is a mother to 5 sons, the mother-in-law to 2 lovely young women, and the grandmother of 3. Ms. Samsara, thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to pin you up as I begin to introduce all of the panelists. Next, we have Ms. Yaisha Wynn. And please forgive me if I just messed that up, because I do want you to tell me the correct pronunciation of that. Midwife, co-founder, and program director for Beloved Birth Black Centering. Since graduating with a master's degree in nurse midwifery from University of California, San Francisco, she has worked as a full-scope midwife for Alameda Health System, Alameda County SafeNet healthcare provider. She provides labor and delivery care at Alameda Health Systems, Highland Hospital in Oakland, California. She also is, hold on 1 second. She provides, she also is in the prenatal and postpartum care at Eastmont Wellness Center in East Oakland. Yaisha is a mother of one son. Miss Yaisha Wynn. And last, but certainly not least, Council Member Angela Andrews, our own. She, and I'm going to pin Miss Wynn up here. And Miss Angela, I'm going to pin you as well. Miss Angela Andrews, council member. She became the first African-American woman elected to the Hayward City Council in 2020. She is a lifetime member of BWOPA, and I'm proud to say a member of the Hayward South County chapter. She is a champion for economic development, affordable housing, and promoting Black culture in Hayward. In 2021, she organized the first Juneteenth celebration and spearheaded, along with the NAACP, a business closure for Juneteenth for the city of Hayward. She lives in South Hayward with her husband, Greg, and their 3-year-old daughter, Greer. So let's welcome Miss Councilmember Angela Andrews. What a powerful opportunity to hear directly from Black birthing people, women, and allies. I walked away from that video wanting to know, are there policies that support Black birthing people and their families? As Dr. Cassandra has already mentioned, there were several different state bills that have been enacted. One of them being, as she mentioned, the Omnibus Act, which is SB 65, aimed at reducing maternal and infant mortality that is disproportionately impacting Black families and other families of color. So I want to ask our panelists the first question. And again, this is a community effort, so please, if you have any questions, place them into the chat and we will definitely lift them up. Are there other policies that you are familiar with or you believe that should be enacted to support Black birthing mothers and people? And I will open it up to our panelists.
Well, I'd love to say that we need to include the possibility for more folks to be able to deliver outside of the hospital setting. We are so blessed with Highland, and I'm so honored to be on the panel with Midwife Jaisha, because she is a true midwife, caring for folks and caring for our women. And the Beloved Birth program it should be replicated everywhere, and everywhere there, that especially for Black women, but all women should be receiving that high quality of care and attention and love, just like love grows babies. And she's really doing the angel's work as a midwife in a hospital setting. We need to have women have access to birthing, and reproductive choice means you birth where you would like. And unfortunately, our home birth midwives, a lot of home birth midwives will see clients for free or sliding scale, deep sliding scale, but these folks need to live. So if there were ways for programs that would really cover their care, Medi-Cal does cover licensed midwifery, but the pay scale is so small that the midwives would rather see folks for free and not have to do that much paperwork to get such a small amount of money, So there is that. One of the things that's kind of frustrating to me is that there's a lot of talk and all these, new bills and laws and whatever being put forth, saying how it's supposed to address the problem. But with each one of these, with the Omnibus and then the way Medi-Cal is going to be paying for doulas in California and Alameda County, there's so many more roadblocks being put towards doulas' ability to actually serve people with these programs, with the Alameda County program, an individual doula has to have 2 layers of liability insurance in order to participate in that program. That's for the amount that they're going to be paid, for that amount of fee coming out of pocket for an individual doula, that's going to be almost impossible. We want to have more doulas serving more pregnant people. That's not the way to go. No one's suing doulas. Doulas have been scientifically proven not to be a liability. They're a benefit. So why is that being asked of us? You know, and as wonderful as doula care is, and I've been a doula my entire adult life, 42 years this year, doulas are not the solution. Midwifery care is the solution. And more people being able to have caregivers who care enough to ask you, what did you eat today? Did you have a fight with your partner? You know, to have more than 8 minutes, which is what is allotted to an OB. Even if an OB wanted to give better care, they get 8 minutes. All right, so a home birth midwife visit is an hour or more. So that's time to flesh out a lot of things. A nurse midwife gets more time, like 15, 16 minutes, but that's better than 8. That's better than 8. So, you know, there's so much in the psychosocial aspect of being a pregnant person that is just not viewed as scientific, but it is scientific, and it is all the social justice issues of, is this mama growing her baby in a food desert? So how does she get 100 grams of protein in her body every day? So programs that are less highfalutin, as my grandma used to say, and more actually heart-centered would really be of help. Yeah, so we're about to—
Thank you, Miss.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Miss Samsar. Miss Jaisha, Miss Angela, any other thoughts, ideas, questions that you can lift up regarding that conversation?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you all for having me here. First of all, I apologize for any background noise. There's kind of a lot of traffic here, but yes, you know, I know that Beloved Birth Block Centering is new, so many of you may not have heard of us before. We've been around for 1.5 years. We launched at the start of COVID. We are a group perinatal care program by us, for us, rooted in birth justice, providing group care, 2-hour group visits to address exactly that issue. We can't provide high quality care in less than 10 minutes, right? So we are providing midwifery-led group perinatal visits. The group model of prenatal care has been shown to improve our health outcomes, and especially for us as Black people who are dealing with all the different layers of structural racism. And then we also, it's by us, for us. We have an all Black care team. Why? Because of the interpersonal, explicit, and implicit racism, right? So our program is anti-racist at its core, designed to transform from our public health systems out, because we can no longer tolerate the public health systems. They're getting our money, they're getting publicly funded, right, to take care of our Medi-Cal insured population. But are they providing evidence-based care, evidence-based models that actually improve the health of Black communities? No, they're not, and they could be. And so when it comes to policy, I think that's the important thing to understand. We have to demand, doulas are one part of the solution, absolutely necessary, but it's not the whole picture. We can't have a doula trying to support a person in a broken system. And that's what we're asking doulas to do right now, is to go into broken care systems that are over medicalized, that are built on white supremacist systems, that are not made by us, for us. And so what Beloved Birth Block Centering is all about is we need to transform and say, no, those systems getting our public tax dollars to take care of Black people, they need to be following the evidence. We need to be using all the evidence-based strategies that we know work for us. And what are those? That's group care, that's racial concordance, meaning Black care team for Black people, and that is the wraparound social support, especially for our Medi-Cal insured population, which is lower resource because of structural racism and doesn't have all the things they need. So our program provides them with a bunch of material supplies. Our program provides them with free doulas, midwifery-led group visits. We deliver produce to their house because of food deserts, nutritional insufficiency. We deliver produce, is included in the prenatal care, free. Everything is free to the birthing person. We include the produce. We include 6 weeks of restaurant prepared meals postpartum. Imagine DoorDash to your door for 6 weeks postpartum. Okay, that's what we're talking about. It is VIP, gold package, Black love. And that's what we think should be the standard for our Black community because of the crisis of our outcomes right now. And so when it comes to policy, you know, we started with funding from the Perinatal Equity Initiative, right? This is state funding, passed in 2018, state legislature, but counties had the option to opt in or opt out. We're one of only 2 counties in the whole state that decided, you know what, sure, we'll take that money to do something better for Black people. There's a lot of counties who said no thanks. And I think that's a huge problem, right? There's counties serving large numbers of Black people who said, oh, extra money to help promote Black maternal and infant mortality? No, thanks. And that's crazy to me. So I think that we have to, I think that from a policy perspective, we in Black community have to demand, hey, no, we know there's better. And you shouldn't have the option. Public systems and counties shouldn't have the option to say no thanks. They should be mandated to offer anti-racist models of perinatal care that are community built, that are community engaged, that are led by and for Black people. And I think that should be the standard. So that's what we're doing with Blood Birth Black Centering, is setting the new standard to say, hey, look what we can build if we do it in community. Look what we can do. Now we won't accept anything less, And so, yeah, we're really, really blessed to have a wonderful community relationships. We are on group number 11, our 11th group of Black mamas and birthing people. Each group has 8 to 12 people in it on average, although some of our groups have been so big, they've had 18. So we've had a huge demand. The Black mamas coming through our programs are so excited to be able to be together and be able to have this kind of deep support. And we launch a new group every 2 months. We want to expand to launch a new group every 1 month so that we'll have 12 groups a year. So we're trying to staff up to do that. But our whole care team involves Black midwives like myself. We have 6 Black midwives at Alameda Health System Highland Hospital, so we have the capacity for it. We also in our team have Black lactation consultants, family support advocates through our public health department. We have doulas, we have artists. We create our own travel with education. So we have an illustrator who does amazing work so that we can see ourselves reflected with loving images of Black birthing people. So we're really on a journey to create that inclusive care team to be able to do the work.
Thank you so much. I love that. Miss Councilmember Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge everything that I'm hearing so far. What we're striving for is the standard for other communities, and we deserve the same. So I appreciate the other panelists in their efforts for us to have the same level of care. From a city council member's perspective, we have at the city of Hayward submitted a referral on reproductive justice. It was in light of what we were seeing across the country on the attack on female bodies. And we didn't want to just include the option of pro-choice, but also think about reproductive justice in terms of education. So the city wanted to put a referral out and also a city resolution acknowledging that you have reproductive rights here in the city of Hayward. You have reproductive rights here in California, and we want to make sure that stays. So that's the first thing I wanted to just acknowledge, and I want to give a special shout out to Councilmember Wahab for putting that out and letting me and Councilmember Marquez endorse that referral. The other thing I would say is that any bill that is supportive of women is something that I'm really interested in endorsing and helping along, because a lot of the times before, like the video said, before you're even pregnant, you have the stress of being Black, you have the stress of being female. So what are the bills that are going to help elevate us as women, elevate us as Black people? And there is a bill out right now, AB 1287, called the pink tax. And there's literally a tax just on being female for certain products. So if you see that pink razor, it's probably going to be 50 cents more, $1 more. And that really impacts a lot of communities. I mean, a lot of people are in a place of privilege where they may not even acknowledge, but for other people, they're really counting those dollars. So I'm always looking for bills and referrals that are going to support women in general. I did have a doula, and I would love to have more education about what a doula is. When I was pregnant, it was around the same time Kamala Harris was talking about the Black maternal health crisis. So I was terrified, and I wanted to get more education while I was pregnant to understand what I'm going to be going through, and not just what to expect when you're expecting, but really things that are going to impact the Black mother. And so a friend who actually is a white woman actually recommended that I get in contact with a doula. She was reading all about how Black women are particularly at risk for infant death, for, you know, maternal death during delivery. And so I actually read a book called Like a Mother. I'll put it in the chat. It's Like a Mother by A Feminist Journey Through Science and Cultural Pregnancy. It's by a fellow Angela named Angela Garbs. And it was the NPR Best Book of 2018. And it talks about how the policies and the systemic oppression within the medical care system is the reason why we're struggling. We can't use these same systems, and we need more support. So for me, what I would love to see is more advocacy, even at the local level. If there's any bills that you would like us to endorse, please let us know. And we want to just provide options, because that's what a lot of other communities have, their options. And our community doesn't know the options because we don't have that same access.
Thank you so much. You know, you hit it on the head when you asked the question, centered around and when I've been talking about this conversation, a lot of people were questioning, well, what's the difference between a doula and a midwife? And I think we come into the conversation assuming that people know what those differences are and what they are in general. And so with the two women that we have here, can you please educate us about what each one does and the role of the midwife and the role of a doula?
Well, both are very honored and ancient professions, first and foremost. There have always been doulas and there have always been midwives. Midwifery is the only medicine that evolved with humanity, because although we're wonderful and amazing creatures, it's sometimes kind of hard to get our little babies to come out on our own. We need help. And so as women, we evolved to assist each other in when a little one is coming. And so those first people who had their hands on the perineum in assisting the little one and working with the pregnant person or mama through the pregnancy, listening, caring, solving disputes either if needed. Midwives were the backbone of any community that they're in. La Patera in Mexico and Latin America are considered sainted people for the work they do. It would be nice if midwives were considered sainted people in this country, because they are. And the doulas were the community, the people who came, who helped, and who supported the midwife in their sacred responsibility for that life. In this culture, the midwife has the responsibility for the healthy birth of that child and the healthy well-being of its mother, right? So, that's the basic difference. Is the midwife assists the delivery, and the doula assists everybody else, including the midwife, because I've been at births where I've certainly made a sandwich for my sister midwife who's tired and been tracking the client. Midwives are supposed to not eat and not think about anything but their client's well-being. I'm thinking about the client, the partner, the granny who's freaking out in the corner, and midwife who needs a glass of water. That loving, what I love about Midwife Jaisha's program is that it's a reconnection of that village mentality around her parent. Her clients have their mamas, aunties in the group and in their lives. That is what helps bring strong babies into the world. All those people with loving eyes on that pregnant person and seeing the best. I just want to say real quick that we want to be careful with these statistics, because the statistics are scaring our daughters to death. And so we spent a half hour talking about how they're going to die, they're going to die, they're going to die. So when the doctor says, well, you're going to get induced, you should get induced because, it's better for you, she's going to do that, when that is not the answer. So I certainly will, shut up now. Let Mama Jay.
Well, we appreciate you, Ms. Samsara, for bringing that up, because I think that you and I have been on another forum similar, and you did mention that, and I want to acknowledge that aspect, that we're here to bring it all up, but to also look at the beauty in the birth, because it is beauty in that.
Beautiful young Black women saying, I just won't have a baby then. And that's heartbreaking because that's what racist patriarchy wants. No Black people. And so if we accommodate them by our choice to not, that's not a choice if you're doing it out of fear, right?
Yes.
Nobody has to be a parent. No one should have to be a parent if they don't want to do that. But if you're not choosing to be a parent because you're afraid you're going to die in the hospital, that's unacceptable.
Thank you, Ms. Samsara. Ms. Jaisha?
Yeah, thank you so much, Samsara, for your wise words, for all of that. It's so real. And that's a lot of times, what I think about that's core to the energy of our program is how do we counteract the weathering and the fear? Because that's how people come to me when they're pregnant. They tell me, I hear the statistics, I'm scared out of my mind. And so, while I'm motivated by those statistics and I know I keep those statistics close and I have a, fine focus on eliminating those statistics, when it comes to how we communicate out to the community about our program, we try to be super mindful of not leading too much with that and really leading with solution focused, strength-based messaging about, yes, we are in a crisis. Yes, that's real. And yes, that's why we do need to pay attention. But guess what? This is about solutions and it doesn't have to be this way. Here's the beauty of it. We know there's nothing wrong with us as Black women. There's nothing wrong with our African ancestry. This is all preventable. And so that's the message I really drive home for our birthing people when they get in the program. Session 1, group visit number 1, we spend the whole time talking about how none of this is just the way it has to be. And in fact, you are in a program, like I explained, that has all the things in it already baked in to help you not be one of the statistics, so that we can inspire hope and not have our Black mamas and birthing people walking around scared. Absolutely so important. And the loving images and the photo shoots. We provide a lot of things that are just about Black joy, because we need that. Because if we walk around thinking about these statistics all day, especially when you're pregnant, oh, no, it's real bad. And so we do a lot to just uplift that joy piece, celebrate, So thank you for bringing that in, Samsara. And it's something that, we always want to remember. So I'm a nurse midwife. And I, everything Samsara said is right on. We're the oldest professions. I think that, there's always been midwives, there's always been doulas. And, there are different pathways to midwifery. I happen to be a nurse midwife. That means that I'm an advanced practice nurse practitioner in women's health as well as a midwife. There are midwives who are...
Can I interrupt just a moment? Somebody has looked like some background noise opening. I don't know if anybody else hears this, but it's kind of disturbing to hear the speaker. So if that's you, just remember to mute, please. I'm sorry, Raquel or Cassandra, but it was bothering me. So
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So sorry about that. So I'm in a cafe and I'm going to pause and maybe let the next person talk and then I'll talk again. Somebody walking by with a huge speaker.
No problem. Go ahead. Councilmember Angela.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that cultural fear that is happening in our community for Black women. Speaking from experience, again, yes, there was a lot of that talk while I was pregnant. So I was terrified. It was all over the news. And just speaking from my own experience, my mother, she had a stillborn, she had a miscarriage. I had a miscarriage. And I do think that's part of the reason why there's this fear, because not enough people are talking about those things can happen during pregnancy, but also we are resilient and you keep going if you really want to have a baby, whether it's through your body, through a surrogate, through adoption. Just remember there's other options as well. But if you are going to go on this birth journey, we should know all the risks that are involved in having a child. And so for me, I took a lot of strength from my mother. For her to go through that much in order to have me gave me the strength to keep going after I had my miscarriage. And so I do understand that we don't want to continue talking about statistics. We do want to talk about the reality a little bit so people can be prepared if something like that happens. But I do feel like I got a lot of support from my doula because the doula explained that you have this image of having birth in a hospital and it's supposed to go within this time frame, and the hospital, they have their timelines. They don't tell you that, but I'm sure there's a secret timeline in the back of their break room saying, okay, we got to get this person out by, whatever day in order to make sure we get the next person in. And the woman's body doesn't work that way. We're giving life to a human being, and we need to allow for that process to happen. And the doula was a huge advocate for me, because not only was I nervous about what happened with my mother, what happened, with myself, I was nervous what was gonna happen to my own self, like what is gonna happen to me personally. And so the doula was there to make sure I was okay, not just trying to hurry up and get this baby out of me. Also, the doula really helped with reminding staff of what your birth plan is. My husband was there. This is pre-COVID. My husband was there. My mother was there, but they're looking at me speechless about what's happening to me and what I'm going through. And so the doula was there to remind the staff, she does not want a C-section. She does not want a C-section. She does not want a C-section. And she had to constantly say that for hours. And I was in labor for about 3 days, and I was not on the timeline. I was not on the hospital's timeline. I was on my own body's timeline. And so I think having the doula explain just how beautiful the experience is, even through the pain, and reminding you of that was super helpful to me. But they also reminded me of the reality of, things can go different ways, and you will keep going even after that.
So I love that. I think that's important. Ms. Samsar, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, I wanted to address that what my sister just spoke of, and that there actually is a rule. It's called Nagel's rule. When you go into the hospital, they want you to dilate 1 centimeter an hour, which nobody does. Nobody. But I just wanted to address that. That's a thing. And so, we really do need to revamp how our system of gynecology in this country is practiced on human bodies. It is racist at its core. If we know about, how the instruments were devised on the bodies of enslaved women, surgeries done without anesthesia, that cruelty is kind of embedded into the thinking of that practice. And the disrespect of Black and brown bodies is endemic. So, when we have these conversations with our daughters, so I'm grandma age, so I'm talking to daughters and grandma and granddaughters now. We have to remind them that is the problem, not their wonderful bodies. And the deal is about you being well hydrated, well loved. The oxytocin is, scientists, all the stuff that my granny used to say to me, science is now approved, so I can talk about it out loud. So we need a lot of oxytocin making human beings. Oxytocin is the love hormone. It's the hormone that helped to make the baby. It's the hormone that's going to help the baby grow. It's going to help the labor start. It's going to help the breastfeeding go well. So having harshness and cruelty or snapping at or lecturing to pregnant ladies, she's not making any oxytocin. And that's going to affect herself as a person carrying another little human being. It's going to affect the little human being growing inside of her. I want to take a second to address Sister Angela, your loss, and give my sorrow for that. That always
Yes.
be acknowledged, and for your family's lineage of losses. I'm very sorry that you all experienced that. And yes, we are incredibly strong. And I want us to be able to move away from just having to be fighting all the time. Because if we lived in a different world where we were really valued and cared for, we would just have our babies. And it would be an incredibly rare thing for any of us to lose a child. And you look at other countries on the planet today, they have to go back generations before they see a maternal death or an infant death. Right now, today. Right? And those happen to all be socialized countries. with midwives taking care of all the needs of the pregnant people. You don't see an OB unless you need a surgeon. OB is a trained surgeon. This is the country that has surgeons treating yeast infections. What a waste of money.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Say something. I'm sorry.
Yes, no problem. I was going to actually ask Ms. Jaisha. Let me just ask you this, because we're coming down to our about 10 more minutes of our time together. How do we engage providers in conversation centering on the quality of care and implicit bias? And then also, how do we allow, or not allow, but how do we center the voices of the Black birthing women or Black birthing people to be able to be their own advocates? That's really an important component too, because even if we're going to doctors' offices and having those conversations, maybe we don't have our doula or someone else along that's going to support us, but how do we ourselves show up for ourselves to be able to advocate for ourselves?
That's a great question. I think we have to know our rights, and we have to understand that healthcare providers work for us and not the other way around. That's a big piece of the education that I do in Black centering as well. I can't tell you how often people will say, well, my doctor, will they let me do this? Will they let me do that? Well, a midwife, can I do this? Can I do that? I stop them every time. You are the boss. Nobody can make you do anything. You don't get into the hospital and that means all of a sudden you're a ward of the state, right? Like then they're going to make you do things. Like we can't make anybody do anything. And that includes an emergency C-section, even if we think it's needed. And now I'm a midwife, so I first assist, I'm not a surgeon, but yeah, so we can't make them do anything. And that's really important for us to understand that when we go into a healthcare environment, whether you're talking to your doula, your midwife, your doctor, nurse, anybody, that it is on them to give you the information that you need to make a decision. And then you make the decision, and then it's their job to respect that decision, period. They can express their concerns if they, if it's not a decision they would have made for themselves. They can give you more information, but then you make the decision, and we respect that. And that's how it needs to function, no matter the provider. But we in the United States have a very over-medicalized system. So like Samsara said, the countries that have the best outcomes for mom and babies have midwifery-led care, period. And in this country, many people don't even know what a midwife is. And especially in our Black community, that history was really erased through a racist attack on the profession, taken over by white doctors. And so we have to regain our connection to our history of midwifery. We have to understand that today, there are countries, like what Samsara said, who have very good outcomes, healthy outcomes. We don't need to be seeing these rates of maternal mortality and morbidity and infant mortality. We need to understand that we don't, midwives are the experts in normal, natural physiological processes. So like Miss Angela was explaining, your body works a certain kind of way. It's not meant to be fit on some kind of, artificial timeline. And, obstetricians are surgeons, and that's not their expertise is the normal labor process. And so we need to use them for their expertise. And thank God we have them, because sometimes C-sections are necessary, right? Their skills are very valuable. But if we overuse them and just have a system blanketed with that, especially with the racism built into that system, we're never going to be healthy, period. We'll never be healthy. And so we have to push our systems and demand, I want a midwife, and I want a midwife who looks like me, and I want a doula, and we really need to demand that of the system. And, thank God we have policy now that mandates that providers do implicit bias training. But as explained, there's so far the research doesn't show that's effective. We don't know how well that's going to work. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know what that training needs to include exactly to produce the desired outcome, and how long that person is then going to be able to provide care at a higher quality of level that is less racist. We don't know those answers. We're finding that out over time. And so it's in the meantime, though, I think we really need to work on the pipeline. We need more Black midwives. We need more Black doulas. We need more Black healthcare providers of all kinds. Nurse midwifery, my profession, midwifery in this country is over 90% white. The racist campaign that was inflicted on midwifery in this country was very successful. And so that is a shame. And that is a big reason of why we're here with these outcomes that we are having. We should have a ton of midwives. There should be a midwife on every corner in the Black community. And if there was, I don't think we'd be in this situation. Our grannies knew a lot of things. Our grandmothers, our foremothers had a lot of wisdom, and that was taken from our community. And so I think that's the biggest thing. We need to work on the pipeline. We need to inspire our children to get into these professions. I'm kind of a new wave coming out of UCSF of a purposeful effort to increase the number of Black midwives. And so It is only because of that purposeful work and that pipeline that we're seeing more of us coming into the profession. And so now we are trying to regain that. But I think just spreading the word through our communities of what midwives are, we're the experts in normal, natural processes of pregnancy, of birth, and we do well woman basic care throughout the lifespan as well. There are different kinds of midwifery. No one is better than the other. That's another thing. If I don't know how many know about midwifery, but there's a whole politics around that. You know, whether you're a certified professional midwife, a certified nurse midwife, a licensed midwife, they are all midwives and all wonderful. I became a nurse midwife just simply because I wanted to be able to meet people where they are, meaning hospitals usually don't hire licensed midwives or certified professional midwives, meaning our Medi-Cal insured people often don't have access to midwifery care. So I became a nurse midwife so that I could be accessible to our poor, Black birthing people who don't have the money to pay out of pocket for a private midwife. And so we need all the kinds of midwives in all the places, and we desperately need out of hospital birth options as well.
Thank you so much. I'm going to allow everybody, we're coming down to the couple of minutes here of our program today. So I want to, first of all, thank everyone for showing up. Two, definitely want to thank our panelists for speaking truth to power. It's when we are able to get information like this that we can, whether or not we are actually getting to birth ourselves, but we can always be able to plant seeds in family members and other children and neighbors in the community itself. And this is how we water those plantings. So thank you so much. I'm going to go back around to each of our panelists, please allowing you to give us just a little bit more nugget of closure in how we show up. So Councilmember Angela Andrews.
Yes, I thank you so much for having me again. Just wanted to acknowledge that during my first pregnancy, I had a really terrible time with a nurse. And so it's so important to have nurses that are just culturally aware, have manners, have bedside manners, not just the doctor, but the nurse as well. When I was with my first pregnancy, the interaction, I went in, I was really excited. And she was clicking around, looking at the monitor, and her tone was, "Who told you you were pregnant?" And I'm like, "Well, I took a pregnancy test and I feel like I am, so that's why I'm here." "Well, I'm not seeing anything, so I don't know if it's here anymore." And so the tone of it was just so nasty. You could just feel the microaggression, and it was so bad. The doctor was great, but that nurse reacting that way to my miscarriage, I changed insurance.
Of course.
So you do, even though you're with your insurance company, you have other options, and you have to do what's best for you. You can take control of your body and what you want to experience and the level of care that you believe you should have. I know a lot of women, because they don't have the knowledge of that, they would deal with that kind of nurse every time they went in for a checkup. Every time they went in when something was wrong, they would probably have that experience. So just know that there are options out there. And then just some closing words. I have a lot of friends who have babies. They had babies during the pandemic. There's a formula shortage. It's not all just about delivering this child. There's a lot of women who are going through it right now. So what I've been doing is texting my friends, "Do you need formula? What kind of formula need?" Because not every formula sits well. Not everyone has the ability to breastfeed, and there's a stigma on whether you need formula or not. There's just a lot of pressure being a mother of a young newborn. So if you have anyone in your family that's going through that, or your friends, daughters, or anyone you know, they need that support right now. I have friends who are literally driving around the county trying to get formula. And so this is a reminder that our country, someone said it, we're supposed to be a developed country, but we're experiencing this right now. So please talk to your local representatives, let them know this is a crisis that is happening. The attack on women's bodies, the attack on Black women's bodies, the lack of care for Black children. We need more representation at the policymaking level to address issues in our community. So that's all I want to leave with. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Sister Angela Andrews. Ms. Samsara Morgan, and then we will close it out with Ms. Jaisha Wynn.
I think that one of the things I want to say as we close is that I'm very impressed by this beautiful group of brown and Black women and all of us mommy age or grandma age. And I really want to speak to us and whoever ends up watching this lovely conversation. I really want to inspire us to inspire our kids, our daughters and sons who want to be parents. Sometimes the biggest hindrance for a birthing person is their mother, telling them the child wants a natural birth, and the mother is like, oh girl, you don't want to do that. You don't want to feel that. Why do you want to feel that? And statistically, the more organic the birth is, the better for mother and babe. So if you have a young person in their life and wants to have a physiological birth experience or wants to birth at home with a midwife, please do your best to get the support you need to be supportive to that. Because statistically, that is really, not everybody can go to beloved birth. I wish they could, believe me. But if folks are wanting to explore, we're talking about a licensed midwife. This is somebody who is experienced and has delivered other babies. If we look at our own state information gathered by the state health department around the outcomes of home births, it's very, very, very good. Very, very little, if no injury or demise in that population. So that's something that we should hopefully encourage for our daughters and granddaughters and bless them. It may have been different for us. We allow them to have a different experience and enjoy the outcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Samsara. Ms. Jaisha, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for inviting me today. This is my first time meeting this group, and I just think it's so beautiful. One of our goals with Beloved Birth too is to really activate and empower our mamas, our Black pregnant people. So when they come through the program, this is the kind of resource that I want to share with them. When we get them all fired up about the injustices of the maternal health system, where do they go from here? Well, I hope that they can connect with people like you, women who've been doing this work. And that's what I tell them. There have been Black women fighting for our rights since the beginning of time, So we talk about birth justice, we talked about reproductive justice, we talk about policy. And that's information that's not normally included in childbirth education, right? But that's our childbirth education. We know that we need that included because that's relevant. That was one of the biggest predictors of our health, right? And so I just want to thank you all. We also just made a wonderful promotional video that I shared a link to in the chat. And so check it out. It gives you a good kind of feel of some of our team, along with, a couple of our program participants. And yeah, I'd love to collaborate more in the future. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, ladies. I will now go ahead and just say thank you for this conversation. I have a daughter that is within the age of wanting to have a child. And I know my own experience. My grandmother, my mother, my best friend, my husband, we were all in the room together. So it was a collaborative effort. And even my grandfather, who was way over in the corner, but it was the most beautiful thing to when she came, everyone was there. So I thank you, thank you, thank you. I will turn it over to Dr. Cassandra.
I would just very in one sentence summarize, and that is, we need a comprehensive, I think, advocacy and policy strategy that embraces the role for midwives, for doulas. What I'm hearing out of this conversation is that, we need a liberatory consciousness, right, around options. We need to have all of them. It's not one or the other, but all the options that you presented today. And for me, I'm old school, I'll admit it. I need to have some specific, I would like some specific action steps, right? That we can take that embraces all of what we've talked about today. Not just a single legislative piece around reimbursing doulas, not just a single legislative piece about workforce development to get more midwives going, but all of it a Black liberatory strategy around reproductive health for Black women. So that's what I would be advocating for at this point. It's been a very rich discussion. All of you have been just such a significant made contributions to this. Thank you so much, Raquel. And we have 2 minutes, and our state president is gonna, since we're so fortunate to have her here throughout the whole presentation, I want to give her a couple of minutes to wrap, Sister Desi. You're muted, Sister Desi.
Just said, let me unmute. I'm talking. Dr. Cassandra Gilbert, thank you so much. Let me just again say to Rita, our chapter president, the HAYWARD South County chapter, all of the panelists led by a wonderful facilitator, Raquel Johnson, excellent conversation, and thank you all for your sharing your expertise. Thank all of the participants for joining us in, again, this very, very important conversation. And Dr. Cassandra Gilbert, you know, I'm always thinking, your summary of what you pulled out of this has just sort of rethought, we made me rethink what our closing session is going to be in July. We have one final session. And I think sort of, again, having, as we said before, all of our chapters do the outreach and effort. For those who just said, like Sister, I'm trying to get her name right, Jaisha, about what BWOPA's role is. I'm so glad we connected because we are an advocacy team. We are the people who promote how to move policy and things that are needed in our community. And we've been doing it for years, and we have experts in doing how to do it. We're not the policy people on every issue because we can't be, but we know healthcare and Black women is so important. That's one of our core issues, as was said by Dr. Gilbert earlier. What we want to do is show people how to make those things happen. How do we talk to our legislators? How do we advocate and get that funding and those resources that you need in your community? And so I think it's I'm just giving Dr. Cassandra another task, but I think you and I will talk along with Shantae and her team, how do we close this thing out in July? And I think rather than using our format, which has been wonderful, that we may want to really focus in on what are our targeted issues, how do we build, and invite some of these same community leaders and activists that have been with us throughout the chapters to join in that conversation, not just from HAYWARD, but from Fresno. You know, we've had tremendous support there from Oakland, from Berkeley, et cetera. So let's you and I talk about that. But I again want to thank you for sharing great information, panelists. I don't want to close without saying again to our partner, Shantae, and again, our Center for Black Wellness and Prosperity could not be here, but Kata, I cannot leave without mentioning Kata's name. She's been part of our team. She works closely with Shantae. Kata, thank you for, again, always being there and being supportive. We appreciate you. I want to again acknowledge that there's a lot of work to be done out there. And so with all of that said, let us come together. I guess I'm, as much as I appreciate the fact that we had some attentive attendance today, people who listen well, my concern is that there's so many sisters out there who need this information. There's so many folks that are struggling who don't have. And so I know in many of our Super Saturday conversations, we've had 150 or 200 women on the call. I want to see if we can find a way to make this reach. And I'm not just talking about HAYWARD. I'm saying again, maybe we talk about in July, how we all come together and we build this outreach because we want to help those that need the help the most. And that's one of the things that BWOPA has been able to do on a lot of issues in the past. So with that, I want to thank again, all of you all for your input, for your caring, for your time, for your expertise. It's been a wonderful and phenomenal conversation. On a personal note, I want to say to Rita again in the HAYWARD chapter, thank you for your personal uplift of me during these past several months. I look forward to seeing those of you who can come to memorial service on July 2nd. And Rita in the HAYWARD chapter, thank you for your spa treatment. I'm going to eventually try to get to using that. So when some of this is in the past, but I love you all and thank you so much. If nothing else from Rita, we're out of here. And thank you all for a wonderful discussion on this Super Saturday. And we'll be looking at July. And again, we may change that real quickly just while you're on there. Cassandra, we have a board meeting scheduled for July 18th. If we change the format, instead of going July 11th for our final Super Saturday, let's you and I discuss July 18th, but I don't want to have that conversation now, and maybe combine the board, state board meeting with this kind of conversation as next steps. All right?
Yeah.
Love you all. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Enjoy your Saturday, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you,
And
Raquel.
good to see you,
Thank
Carolyn.
you, Dr. Cassandra.
Raquel. Love you, Desi.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.